All right. All right. And we're live. Welcome to paraglidingtalk.com. I'm your host, Robert Michaels. I'm glad you're here. We've got a great show lined up tonight. We got Jordan Neidinger with us. And in moderation, we got Scott and also Sean Nafsker. So Jordan just made it to the house. He's going to get in the studio. We're going to talk about some really good stuff. We've got some really good topics for tonight. So I'm super stoked about that. Want to encourage you to go to the website and check out some of the previous episodes. Particularly the last time that we had Jordan on, we talked about weather and a few other really good topics, and just it was an amazing show. You're definitely going to want to check that out. So I think it was episode, oh man, I want to say it's like 2 something. It was 6 months ago. And anyways, really good show. So if you want to go back, paraglidingtalk.com, check out some of the previous episodes under the tab. Every show that's ever been recorded is on the website. So you can go back and check out any one that you want. If there's somebody that you think would be really good for the show, somebody that you're like, man, I think this would be a great guest, feel free to email me. You can go to the website, paraglidingtalk.com/contact, and put in the notes, hey, I'd like to see this person, and maybe put their email in there. And the team and I will look at that and send out an invitation to have them on. And would love to hear your feedback about things about the show. And maybe you got some constructive criticism and things that you would like to see be better about the show. Let us know. We're always open to take your criticism. Also want to encourage you to support the show on Patreon and PayPal. If you do that, it makes the show smooth and fun, and makes it exciting for me. And it affords me to be able to give stuff away on the show, and keeps the things smoothly running. Everything has a price. Zoom has a monthly fee. My internet has a monthly fee. You've got monthly fees for all kinds of little widgets for the website and all just different things. And so that's what the show pays for. And then also we buy things to send out to people as every show, and we spin the wheel of Winnie things. Isn't that right, Sean?
That's right.
Want to mention a couple sponsors. One of those is Harley Milne. He runs a school here in California. He is a world record holder for paramotoring. He flew coast to coast across the United States. He also flew 50 states. He took the challenge and he flew in all 50 states in the United States, raising money for charity. Really cool thing to do, very complicated thing to do. And so he's got a great handle on logistics. If you want to fly cross country, maybe you're already a good pilot, but you're thinking, I'd like to go and do some traveling and some adventure flying, and maybe join some of these adventure groups that go flying on an annual basis. Harley Milne is going to be the guy to reach out to. There's just a handful of other guys that I would recommend, but Harley is top notch. His website is dreamlifterparamotors.com. Also want to mention Andrew Fuller. He has a full service wing repair and checkup shop. Check out his website at paraglider-inspection.myshopify.com. Gringo did mention that he was going to be out for tonight. He must be flying, because that's the only reason that you're allowed to miss the show. And so he normally would put the links in the description, but there's links in the description. He would normally put them in the chat, I guess. Paramotorprops.com. If you accidentally blow up your prop, it's gonna happen. That's a regular thing. Oh, Mad Sloper said, what happened to the 6 a.m. show? What is this? 2 a.m. Oh no, look at this. That was a huge mistake. I just realized. Yeah. Let me see here. Oh man. Yep. Supposed to be on at 6 a.m. 6 p.m. Good catch, Mad Sloper. I'm still dealing with some issues with the new internet. So my IP address is from somewhere in the middle of New Zealand. So it's 2:07 p.m. in New Zealand right now. Anywho, paramotorprops.com is an awesome website to get you sorted for props. They're going to answer your questions. They'll be able to help you to get a good deal and find the right thing that fits your motor. I didn't realize that there were different sizes when it comes to the hub of your props. I also didn't realize that there was such an importance to how many props you have. If you have 3, also I didn't realize that you could have longer or shorter props, and you could have
meaning blades,
RPM,
right?
Yeah, blade, whatever you want to say. But they will have the answers for you. So paramotorprops.com is the website. ppgsmoke.com. If you haven't checked out their website, there was some updates today on the Instagram. Ryan Roberts has all kinds of great things for paramotoring. Go check out his website, ppgsmoke.com. He just announced that there's a deal if you are buying flotation systems. He'll give some extra charges, the extra CO2 cartridges in your purchase. And so go to his website and subscribe to that so you get the emails when he's sending out stuff. So he's trying to clear the shelves, and he's wanting to get these Unity headsets out. And I think his goal is Christmas to have some high quality headsets. Jordan, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. Super stoked. We have got a lot of great feedback about episodes that you were on. And so I really appreciate you jamming home and bending the corners there to make it for the show. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Love your new studio. The last time you were on, you were in the new studio, and so I'm stoked about that. Looks really nice. Sounds really nice. So you got the Yeti Blue for your sound, or something similar?
Yeah. I needed to upgrade a little. When I first started doing my classes, I was doing them out of my car, and since then we got a few more people into the school, so it became worth it to basically outfit the studio. This is actually a shipping container.
I saw that when you got in there.
Yeah, it's a cube, like a short one, but it's done quite well with the soundproofing. It's nice.
Yeah, it sounds great. So tonight, if you guys don't know, Jordan is an instructor here in Southern California. He has a great school and a great track record, has been doing this for a long time, was a tandem pilot for many years. Torrey Pines, I believe he's an instructor there at Torrey Pines as well. Is certified with all types of certifications that are required to do what he does in instruction and flying, obviously. But even better, he's very passionate about flying and has never really wavered, as far as I know, away from flying, and is just got the bug when back in the day, and is stuck with it. So he has a school here. If you want to learn from him, flywithjordan.info. And if you I believe there should be a link in the chat or in the description. If not, we'll make sure that's in there before the thing goes on the internet. So what I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is the fear factor, and start off the show by talking about how do you get over a fear injury or an actual injury, where how do you process through that? And I kind of want to just talk about the different dynamics that bring people into a position where they're getting hurt. And maybe we can solve some of those problems in the next 10, 15 minutes worth of conversation.
Well, that's a nice segue. Actually, I was just looking at the numbers, and I've had about 520 students since I've been teaching, and run about 3,000 tandems. And I began at some point to recognize like patterns of just human behavior, like how humans deal with situations where they're anxious or they're fearful, among other things. So I think that's a good topic. It's a worthy topic, because this is new for us, and we find ourselves in positions where not only do we have to kind of question, what we're doing, other people in our lives will be questioning what we're doing, but also, we're on a journey to fill in that absence of knowledge And that's what produces the fear and anxiety, is like we don't know. It's literally the line between order and chaos. We don't want things to be too chaotic because that's like anxiety. But if you go slowly, you get used to it. You dip your toes in it periodically. You start to you find a little bit of a comfort zone in the chaos that you can come back from it and make sense of what you're going through. So in my own experience, I was scared, when I first learned paramotor. And I think the reason I was so fearful is because I knew that I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, yeah.
There was large gaps, and I knew that there had to be so much more. And turned out I was right. I didn't know a lot. And I didn't even know that there was a publication on paramotor. I thought this was just something that people were figuring out on their own. I learned in Texas, and there's only like 2 people in the whole state that I knew that even knew what a paramotor was. So that was, my journey. And what I realized through flying was just, and it was evident in like the reflection of what I was doing, because I would try to get a GoPro video of flying around, and I couldn't get more than 6 seconds of GoPro footage without me going, oh, right, and checking out the wing and thinking I was going to fall out of the sky. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm really not relaxed. I'm not enjoying this. I'm not, so, and I got to a point where I realized, instead of just like looking up every 6 seconds, um, you know, you don't even know what to do if the wing did fall apart. So why are you wasting your time? It's just enjoy it. And
Good point.
yeah, but then I realized when I came to California and I started flying at paragliding sites, that's when I first saw pilots that were on another level. Because in Texas, I was like a big fish in a small pond, right? And everybody was like, wow, you could do that. And I was like, as a matter of fact, I can. But then coming to Cali, I was just surrounded by pilots that knew how to, check the weather. They knew how to read the data. They understood how their wing worked. They had been to SIV. They were way more accomplished pilots, and they had been through training. Quite frankly, I really didn't get that much of it. So now I see that, right? I see students that are going through the training way faster in their learning curve than somebody like me who was just kind of, trying their luck.
So that's incredible. In 520 students, 3,000 tandem pilots, you probably start seeing a regular kind of offenses and common things. What would you say is the most common? Let's talk about your 520 students. Obviously, you have a great track record for turning out students. Not everyone has a great track record for students, and the next segue of the questions in the line of questions that we're going to talk about tonight, I want to talk about what makes a good instructor. So talk about the different dynamics of this getting into the failure. Scott brought up a good point just before we started the show, and he said there's a peer pressure factor. Talk a little bit about those different dynamics, and what are you seeing out of the 520 students? What would you say is glaring that you would like to address?
Well, there's things that I see in the progression of students that happen on the kiting area, and they are directly related to the risks that they're taking on the launch. And as we know in the sport, I mean, this is kind of a widely known thing, but most of the accidents in paragliding happen on the launch. And, so in that regard, I see a lot of people get to a certain level of kiting, and then they basically just are like, yeah, kiting's for beginners, or they don't want to get out there and do it anymore. And, there's this, I think there's this misperception with students that, like once you get over that hump, you're done. You don't have to revisit it. There's nothing more to learn once you got the basics down. But, after seeing, like, there are some students that will just become obsessive about it. They want to get out there. They almost like enjoy kiting more than flying to some degree. Like
John.
they're equally
Sorry.
as obsessed about it. And so I find that those students, they progress quicker through, the physical part of training. And also they just seem to own the wing. It becomes an extension of their body. They're much safer on the launch. And but then there's people who either they're taking long breaks in between their kiting sessions, or if they do that, they don't kite at all. They just want to run up to the launch and get back into the air again. So in essence, like the only time that they're kiting their wing is when they're launching it. That's just for a few seconds.
Right.
And so that's one of the big ones. I'm constantly urging people to get back into the kiting aspect and just play the long game. Treat it like this is a dance you want to know by heart. And there's so many other nuances to kiting. It's not just having it up there and making it look pretty for 5 minutes, and let the wind do all the work. It's like there's exercises you can do with it, and there's different challenges you can put upon yourself to see if you can really master that wing control. And I have an article in my school that's, I think it's like 12 paragraphs, but it's each paragraph is like a specific kiting exercise that you can do. And that's just the start of it. If you can get those under your belt, how to move the glider around, and how to kite on the edge where there's lift and a change in the relative wind flow. You got an idea of how to recover the high side and control a wing that's out of symmetry, various other things. So I think that's probably the big one, right? Because that's the beginner mistake, is I'm just going to learn enough kiting so I can get into the air type thing.
Right.
Right. And what goes hand in hand with that is the forward launch. I find a lot of people, it's physically demanding, especially if you don't have any wind. But a lot of people kind of do what they can to get past the forward launch phase. And what I see in other pilots, and I whip my students like they're in boot camp on the forward launch. But what I see in other pilots is they'll actually go to a launch on a low wind condition. And many of them will they just won't fly. So they wasted their entire time in the trip up there, and they're sitting around doing just watching the sunset from the launch while other people fly because they do know the forward. Or what I see is people trying to force the reverse in a really unsafe way. I mean, they're basically trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, and they're running downhill backwards with no pressure and no support in their harness, hoping that they can get turned around in time. So
I'm guilty, and that's honorable to put the pressure on the guys to learn forwards, because I've forced it many of times where I'm like, oh gosh, now we have to do a forward or hike down. And I'm like, oh, I'm definitely not going to hike down. So I'm going to risk my life, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, that's another thing too with the kiting aspect of it. When you spend time under your wing, ground handling and kiting a wing, you understand what that wing is telling you in feel, feedback. How much is enough and how much is not enough, to make that decision of a forward or reverse launch. That's where the kiting is very important, and in understanding how much is for this specific wing. Each wing is different, is going to react different, but you'll know those differences if you spend enough time underneath it.
Well, and if you take your canopy skills into other areas, I mean, paramotor, speed wings, a lot of the time you're going to be, relying on your forward skills to get into the air safely. And it's almost like not a choice, right? I mean, if you want the really good conditions for motor, most of the time that's going to be pretty calm
forward.
Yeah, right.
In Europe, it seems like everybody in Europe knows how to forward, and they come here and they're like, there's wind and they're trying to do a forward. And it's like, no, you can just reverse. And they look at us like we're special because we're able to reverse launch every time. I feel like you should, I really like that illustration you gave. You should know the dance moves. Like choreographed dancing doesn't happen by accident. You have to pay close attention to every move. And I'm going to take that with me. I liked what said that. I think it was a comment in the chat just now. what did he say? Kiting is sorry, I lost it.
Kiting is the work, flying is the reward.
Yeah, Kevin
Kevin
can fly. Yep. Yeah, that was a good illustration. To be able to fly, obviously we should treat it like it is a reward. And you probably remember this, Jordan. I was in the parking lot at Torrey Pines and I stopped you. I realized that you were an instructor. You were carrying a couple bags full of tandem gear. And I said, hey, you've got, I said, I'm interested in flying. Hey, what's up, Pops?
Hello, everybody.
My dad normally is watching
Always.
at his house, but he's here with us right now. Drove like 1,000 miles to come just to be on the show. You can pull up a chair. I'll give you a.
No, that's okay.
Okay, good. Yeah. So when we talk about taking on a sport that is so incredibly rewarding, it shouldn't be easy. Shouldn't be just handed to you, you know? I get a little frustrated with guys that come in and are doing infinite tumbles after 8 months, you know?
Well, I think that's why paragliding in particular has it's so captivating for so long, is because it's a long journey. You know, it's kind of like if you're playing piano, you could play Mary Had a Little Lamb on your first day, but to be really like an expert at it would take years, and you know, there's everything in between.
So Jordan,
That's
stop
what
me
makes
in
it
that.
so special. You know, that's what makes it special, is the fact of it's not about the end result, it's about the journey. You know, the times you nailed it, the times that you failed it, you know, the experience, the process, the travels, the time. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
When we had the conversation in the parking lot, your words were they were well chosen. And what you said was, you don't know what you don't know. And I was heading down a path that you had already been down, and it was a great warning to say, hey, you know, don't go down this. And here's what happens, I think, with people go down that road and fear greets them, and it either scares you out of the sport, or you, like we're talking about, have a fear injury that it manipulates the rest of the ride. You don't have to fly scared all the time. Until I did an SIV, I didn't realize how faithful the wing already wants to be. What other things would you argue about 520 students' common mistakes? I mean, I'm sure there's something that you deal with on a regular basis.
Oh, well, I do find that with, I call them like beginner blind spots, right? It's just things coming into the sport that we don't really recognize until somebody points them out. But like, you know, a good example would be like the use of the outside toggle and your turns. I think, you know, it's something that somebody has to show you, right? That's really difficult to just kind of come up with on your own. And so a lot of the coaching, when we're talking about coordinated banked angle turns and the art of turns, you know, you can see that when a pilot is terminating their turns too quickly, they're coming out with the oscillation and the big surges. And then you can also see the lack of the outside toggle when they're, you know, trying to core thermals and they're diving off the back end of it. They don't really have a very smooth bank angle all the way through. So that's a pretty big one. There's a lot with landing. I mean, geez, like the landing thing, you know, but those are skill related. There's something that I see a lot that I think catches, it's another beginner blind spot that catches a lot of folks coming into the sport, is this idea of following other people, both in terms of like, hey, how's the weather doing? You think it'll be good for me? And then also like when you're in the air, like you're flying with people at the site, and you might think, hey, you know, they're over there. And even though, you know, a newbie usually doesn't know what they're looking at, right? I mean, they don't really know if that's like a 15-year pilot that has done that thousands of times, or if that's like, you know, somebody that's not very smart. They're just going to follow them over there anyway.
Right.
But I see that lead to a lot of issues. And fortunately this year we haven't had any like major incidences that are we haven't had any major accidents, which is awesome. I mean, that's usually we have like one or two a year, something, right? But this year we've been very fortunate. We haven't had any of that go on at our particular site. But in the past, I have seen that when people follow other people, that's a lot of times what can lead to like helicopter rescues, flying into rotor. There's been several major accidents since I've been an instructor that I've heard of. Other people, just following those that are around them instead of truly understanding their own flight plan and sticking to it.
What do you think is the answer to some of the it's a tough, I want to argue with some of the guys that come in and they're like pushing too hard, or they're maybe I'll give you an example. We're at Blossom and there's a guy that is clearly not ready to fly Blossom, and all the OGs are on the ground. We fly there every day. It's like, we know in the summer, you just don't launch before 5 unless you want an unpleasant experience. And we had a guy just showing up on a regular basis, launching at like, I don't know, 4:00. And it is like brutal in the air. And he just keeps going out and sketchy landings. He's trying to squeeze in to the bailout when he really doesn't have the skill set to top land. And I'm not sure who told him to come out there, but I know that he had his credentials. He at least had a P3. You want to go up and stop and say, hey, bro, listen, I think this is a good idea, but I also don't want to give up my flying freedom, but when you see somebody coming in and if they pound in and a helicopter has to come, now you got to stop your, I'm just very selfish. I'm coming from a very selfish position here in my story. I've got to stop what I'm doing. I got to now you might violate our spot that we're flying. You might cause problems. You might scare people out of the sport. Someone can see you get hurt and decide, you know what, that could happen to me. I'm going to get out of the sport. And that's the last thing. What do we do? I mean, you've been around the sport for a long time. You got to find a balance, I guess.
That's, I guess I have some kind of platform to address that being an instructor, because, I can fall back on that and I can give like some element of perceived authority when I'm talking to people and be like, well, actually, right. But we all have a duty, I would say, especially because we're such a small and tight-knit community of pilots. And it always becomes apparent in retrospect after something happens that we should have said something or somebody should have said something. And so I think that's probably, if you're wondering if you should go up and talk to somebody and make a point of it, think about it in the retrospect, right? Like, what would it be like if what you were thinking did happen? Because when accidents happen, most of the time, everybody saw it coming, right? There was red flags. This pilot was doing something that was obvious, or their behavior, their attitude was obvious to everybody else. And then the thing happened, and then everybody's left with like, well, obviously that was going to happen, right? But if that was true, then what did that mean about nobody saying anything? And shoot, I don't know if you were there at that paramotor festival at Salton Sea a few years ago when the guy died, right? Because there was somebody that had traded a Harley Davidson, a Harley for a paramotor unit and a wing, and he knew how to fly it. And he was out there just watching people and thinking, how hard could it be? And
right.
the sad part about that, nobody could have helped him because I don't think he said anything to anybody. But the really sad part about that was there was like at least 12 instructors there within like 300 feet of that person before they decided to launch. And any one of them would have been like, no, don't do that, please. Don't even consider it. But then there's those cases too where, people do know ahead of time. And even there's the ones where people know and people say, and the person still doesn't listen. I think, wasn't there a guy at Blossom that pounded in and doinked his head, and I think he went into a coma or maybe died, the German guy?
Yeah, he passed away.
Yeah. So people at
Yeah.
our site, we saw him before he got the Blossom on his trip, and people were at our site were like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like
Really?
some things that, yeah, some things that you're doing don't measure up. You're not really taking this seriously. And he was stuck with the all, oh, I have over 200 flights. That's my best German accent. But, he was,
Yeah.
he was saying, and that's how you know somebody's delusional is that they start telling you the number of flights that they have.
Yeah.
Um,
Justifying themselves.
Right. Yeah. Because that means they're not listening. And so I've seen a guy come to our site and, that was what he was saying whenever anybody tried to tell him, like, he maybe need to figure some stuff out. He's like, immediately, how many flights, how many places, how long? And that guy was like literally launching into a thunderstorm. Like he was launching,
No.
yeah, 5,000-foot crest line launch straight into a big old dark, scary thunderstorm like it was no big deal.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's amazing what people, I don't know what it is when they're just so gung ho about it, but you just hope that you can reach the people who are listening, and that's basically what the whole school is, right? I think I said
Yeah.
this before, but as an instructor, I was like, oh, I'm going to teach people how to fly, but I didn't realize how much of my time I would be trying to convince people not to fly.
Right. Right. Yes. Yeah. Especially when they're so hungry for it. I feel that I was thinking as you're talking, there's actually a Bible scripture that's in the Old Testament, and God had told the people like, hey, I'm telling you to go and warn this wicked people from their wicked way. And it says it like this. It says, if I say to the wicked, you shall surely die, and you give him no warning to warn him from his wicked way, and he dies in his sin, his blood will be required at your hand because you didn't say anything. But if you warn them and they still go into their sin, at least you'll have delivered yourself. And that's kind of how I've been feeling about it. Guys come up and they're like, Robert Michaels, I know you from YouTube. And I'm always like, oh no, like, please don't be bad, please don't suck. And like one day there's this guy from Texas and he comes showing up and he's already in the air. And by the time I get off work, I run to the bailout and I'm like, all right, got my gear, set it down. I'm like prepared to test the wind and hang out and, slap hands with the locals. And I see this dude in there and they're all like, hey, that's one of your dudes. And I was like, what? No. And they're like, yeah, he said he knew Robert Michaels and that's how he knew about Blossom. And I'm like, oh no. And he didn't have a helmet. So he comes in and he's like, he's landing all sketchy and it's like a paramotor wing and it's like 330. I'm like, no. But we, these guys handle it pretty well, but it was kind of, little tongue in cheek correction and kind of mocking. Hey, you see you're flying a paramotor wing there. You got your P2 card. This is a P4 site, and, try to scare them a little bit. What are you going to do? I mean, okay, let's spin the wheel. We'll set Sean free from the spinny wheel of Winnie thing.
No more names in the wheel. Heads up, because I know it's on a little bit of a delay. Live stream for that. You got the screen sharing on there, Robert? Just double checking.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, then let's do this.
I surely do.
All right, so let's do this. Ready?
Yes, sir. I was just reading the chat too. Look at that. I can read every name. The spin of this wheel is brought to you by Calamity Kite Clinic. CalamityKiteClinic.com is the website. You want to learn how to ground handle better? Sean, he'll typically be at some of these fly-ins, and Sean is the one who runs the Calamity Kite Clinic. You sign up with him and just get the best tips. And Sean, you should probably put some videos on your YouTube channel, instruction videos. But he has a great website, CalamityKiteClinic.com. Go check that out. See what the prices look like. See if it's something you want to do. Telling you, you cannot go wrong with being better at ground handling. Find a good spot to ground handle, find a good place, and call up Sean and get some extra training. Also, the Spin and Wheel is brought to you by Nebraska PPG. Josh Bowden runs a school in Nebraska. If you're interested in getting some top-notch training, you can sign up with Josh and his team today. There's a link in the description if you want to get a hold of him. Is that David Andrade?
Andrade. Maybe.
David.
I don't know. I'm butchering that pretty good, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's one of my students.
Nice.
Ah,
Congratulations, David. Please go to the website, paraglidingtalk.com/contact, and I will send you a paraglidingtalk.com t-shirt and some stickers. Thank you for watching and thank you for being a part of the show. Glad you're here. So I wanted to mention that. Let me just also really quick mention Lone Star Paramotor. If you're in the Lone Star state of Texas, you can reach out to Ron Turan. Ron Turan has a great team and world-class training there in Texas. LoneStarParamotor.com is the website. Go sign up, get some training with him today. Also, maybe you're thinking about doing acro. Maybe a beautiful woman. Hello there. Maybe you're interested in getting over your fear. An SIV clinic is where it's at. You're going to learn so much. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. MaxAcro.com. Max just left yesterday. I believe he's in Turkey. They filled up all the slots for this year's Turkey trip. But he's just an incredible instructor, but does really good with SIV trainings. MaxAcro.com. Sign up for next year's trip to Turkey on their website. I don't know if it's available yet, but you just have to sign up. Just do it. So Jordan's 520 students, obviously you've had some people get scared out of the sport. And do they call you? Do they say, hey, you know what, I'm not interested in this anymore. It's just too much for me. The risk is too great. The reward's not there anymore. Talk a little bit about that aspect of the sport. I'm interested to know, just this is personal information. I'm just trying to satisfy my own desires.
The first time I started running across this, I was teaching at Saboba. And at the time, I wasn't booking my own students. I had somebody else that was running ads and sending them in. And unfortunately, it was kind of like the status quo at the time. And I didn't know any better as an instructor, but they were being promised 3-day P2s. So they would come in, from wherever, and they would only pay like $900. And in 3 days, they were expected to walk out with a P2. And the issue there, obviously, at the time it was 25 flights, but it still takes time to get to a P2 level of understanding and comfort. And we were just churning through students because we had the low price tag. But what I didn't realize was there was a lot of people who were just dropping straight out of the sport. They'd get some flights in and, they had a good time for 2 or 3 days, but we would turn them out. We would be like, okay, you're done. And there was this perception after they got the 3 days of training that, what you need more training? Come on, right? Like whatever, right? But so people, I think a lot of them were dropping out because they knew on a certain level that they weren't equipped, they weren't competent pilots. And, after a season of that, because I taught like 45 speed flying students and 72 paragliding students while I was there. And at the time, I was just like, where are these people going? After a while, a few months into it, I was just like, man, I don't see these people anymore. Like, are they just going to different sites or what gives? And, but I soon found out after a while, I did touch base with people that was the story for a lot of people. Were either just not confident and they were giving it up before they even started, or some of them were actually going to different sites and just hucking themselves off and hoping that it worked. And I didn't know that until years later. I had some other pilots be like, yeah, we used to get people from Saboba that were hardly trained, and they were just out here, hoping that it worked, and they didn't really know what they were doing. And so that's actually one of the reasons I got hired on by Torrey Pines, because I knew that there was, large gaps in our training. And so I requested from them that, we could figure out how to, share students and get people back and forth. And they were like, hey, do you want to come work for us? Because that's, some proactive motivation right there. But in Torrey Pines, they treated it differently, right? They kind of kept the community a little tighter, and people weren't expected to just leave the nest after 3 days of training. And so And that was my first like real exposure to students, like as far as like the fear factor goes. Here at this site, we have unlimited lessons, so there no pressure at all on people to get things, done in a certain time period. I mean, it's a skill-based progression, so you're not going to go to a certain level until you can demonstrate competency at a certain skill level. But that being said, there's obviously an element of fear with most people, because it's new and because they're doing something different. And, I think what helps is front loading with the knowledge as much as possible. And this is something you were just talking about, the SIV clinics. This is something I talk about a lot with people that are in my classes, is that you're going to have this period that's like P2 to whenever it is that you decide to go to SIV. And you're going to be in this window where you don't really know how to recover a glider. You're still pretty fresh on your weather knowledge and understanding, yet you want more airtime and you want to fly earlier. You want the extended flights, the choppier conditions that produce those types of flights and airtime. And so the argument there is go to SIV sooner than later, because some people hear that and they're like, oh, I'm not going to go to SIV until like I'm a P3 or I'm a P4. And I'm like, well, what about all of that time that you're a mountain pilot and you've actually never been through a stall or spin recovery? You don't know how to throw a reserve or how that actually feels. You don't know what your wing does when it goes into a cascade event or any of that. You're basically at your highest risk exposure, knowing how to fly, not knowing how to deal with the weather or the conditions that might be over your head. So that's, over and over again in my classes, I'm like, go there sooner than later. I'm always pushing my guys to go to SIV as soon as they have their P2.
Yeah, that was so eye opening for me. What a great thing. How important is a person's drive?
I guess that can be like a double-edged, because I guess in what regard? Because some students are driven along different paths, like I think if you're just in the pursuit of airtime, that can be dangerous because you might be overlooking some of the foundation that you need to be a really confident or competent pilot. And that we see that a lot. I call that like the consumer mindset. Like I'm into paragliding because I just want to consume the airtime. I want that experience and I'm only chasing that experience. That's the only measure of success to me, or if it was or ROI or whatever it is, that if I get more airtime, then things have gone right. But there are other students that, that maybe they're more focused on other aspects, like the learning the weather or learning SIV or really, any other thing. And what I bring up too in the classes is like in my program and USHPA, there's no measure of success with airtime. There's no like syllabus item that says 3-hour flight. Nobody cares if you've got all these, extraordinary hours, right? It's everything else that gets you there. So that's like, that's the end product. That's just the result of you having gone through the process and mastering all the skills and concepts. So, if a student has drive and they're focused on building a strong foundation and they set the airtime thing on the back burner, something that will come naturally as a result of them engaging consistently with what they need to be, that's a far better drive, in my opinion, than somebody that's just completely focused on the number of hours that they're getting when they come out and fly.
Yeah, the one thing that stuck out with me from Stephen Nowak, he said, you don't judge a good driver by how good they drive or how good they hit the brakes or how good they make turns and hit the gas. It's longevity without accidents. Your insurance doesn't really care what you say, or, it's like you're not going to give a 16-year-old cheap insurance. because you can almost guarantee that there's going to be mistakes that are made. When, depending on the way that you come at this sport, I believe that this can be a lifetime sport and you will enjoy it the entire time if you keep your ears open and listen to the right voices. By the way, Resurgence PVG rocks. Will Fly donated $5 to the super chat. Thank you, Will Fly. John Wayne just donated $10 to the super chat. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate your contributions to the show. Pretty cool little feature there. I just noticed that you can actually like the gift. So Will Fly dropped that gift, and you could. There's interesting little things happening here with YouTube. So Jordan, are you creating any kind of podcast, or are you doing any kind of things that people can listen to, or do you have plans to do that or something? I mean, you have a really nice studio.
Well, I've actually been creating some courses that are separate from the school. It's all things we talk about in the school. But
Nice.
right now I have 4 courses that are kind of on the design table, and they're about 80 to 90% finished. But yeah, I kind of want to make this something that people can learn from us that are in different parts of the world, and maybe even forge some collaborations with other instructors or flight schools that maybe don't have the opportunity that we have, like in Southern California. We get a lot of flying days, a lot of experience out here. And, the school's been in business long enough to kind of groom like a pretty nice program. We're working on it all the time, trying to make it better. We added a couple of instructors to the school.
Really? I
Yeah.
didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's I know it's a milestone. I actually ran a business in Texas back in the day, and things when we finally hired other people, that's when the business like blew up and got really professional. So we're starting to see that now. I think we covered 13 tandems in a weekend this last weekend, which was a nice, start. That's difficult to do in the mountain setting.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
incredible.
at Torrey Pines, you could do 18 in a day, but
Yeah.
at our site,
Yeah.
it's
You
impressive to be pulling those numbers. Yeah.
got a 45-minute drive to the top.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it takes about 25, and then, getting everything, it's usually about 1 hour turnaround for a flight, including the airtime.
Right. I'm considering getting my tandem certification so I can take some friends, and I've voiced this opinion, and I've said it out loud a couple times in front of some of the local pilots that have been tandem pilots, and they're like, you need to ask yourself, why do you want to be a tandem pilot? And my default answer is always like, I really like to take my friends and family that are inquiring about the sport, that are really interested, but maybe aren't as interested in going through the full training, and maybe they don't live in the state where they can fly often. Any advice for somebody who wants to go after their tandem certification?
Yeah, I'm a tandem administrator for USHPA, and I have my prerequisites that my own personal standards before I'll consider somebody as a candidate. But there's the T1 level, which is basically you're just flying other pilots around, and there's the T3 level, which is your commercial. You're doing it for money. If somebody's going for the T1 level, I want to see them with at least like maybe 2.5 to 3 years of experience. They're flying pilots that know the risk, they know what they're doing too. And it's a good way to kind of work yourself into the tandem process. As a T3, I'd rather see somebody with about 5 years experience. And that's like more than just one flight a weekend or, once a week flying. That's like somebody who's out at the site all the time. But yeah, I feel like most people have a similar motivation, which is noble. It's admirable that, you want to share something that's brought so much joy to you with other people. And, as a tandem pilot, you can only be doing that for instructional purposes. And so, you want to educate people, you want to show them what paragliding is. And I feel like the sport needs more tandem pilots who are obviously responsible and doing things like to that end, right? They're not out there taking risk or, just we have a pilot. I won't name names. He's actually not USHPA member or anything like that, but he's out there flying just, and it's like for the money, right? Because he's flying two people, passengers at the same time.
Oh,
So
no,
yeah, no, that's like three people on one wing. So
no.
I'm not kidding, right? I mean, it's funny because you see like sometimes in Europe, people will fly like in France, right? They'll fly like their family on one wing and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But this
No,
dude's doing it for money. Yeah.
no way.
Right. No
Oh
insurance,
my
no
God.
credentials, just, like just trying to get the most money out of each flight type thing.
Oh my
And
word.
so that's luckily like within USHPA and within our major sites, we have, we self-police more, keep people from doing those sorts of things. But
Oh my word. I've never
but
heard
it's tempting, right? Because you're mixing the commercial, the money making aspect of it with the instruction, and it's very tempting for some pilots to do what they can to make money. And if it's flying two people at the same time, or if it's like landing at places they that's a higher risk, or if they're not buying good equipment, trying to save money and cut corners. I mean, there's all these
Yeah.
ways that people are going to try to make it more profitable or more affordable, whatever it is. So that can be a huge risk when you're talking about the commercial side of things.
Man. I had this is a question that's just random, and I'm just kind of throwing all different types of questions in here. Is there any reason why newer pilots that want to fly cross country ultimately should have pause getting into pod harnesses?
Well, there's some differences if depends on your experience coming in. So I would say like, everybody's starting on something pretty straightforward as far as like training harnesses go. But if you want to get into pods, like, just like with anything else, if you're stepping up to another level of wings, or, you're going to a site that's more demanding, is just go slowly, build in some safe margins, practice, getting in and out in the simulator, and just know that like, if you're laying back, you probably have more propensity for the riser twist situation if things get out of hand. And, just, check your gear, make sure you're flying good stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's it's funny too, because like I put people in different camps when they come in to paragliding. And most people I find are what we call like recreational pilots, where they're just flying around in circles and smiling at the sky. But then you got people that are like pretty focused on the cross country or the aerobatics or paramotor or speed wings or hike and fly. So, if you have a route like that, that's of interest to you, there's a question, I think it's on the P3 exam, where they talk about mixing gear, how that could be a problem. So if you're like, if you're flying a wing that's not really suitable for the harness setup, and I never really thought about that before I saw that question. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that could be a problem. Like, if you were flying like an Acro 3, Super Acro 3 aerobatics harness with like a cross country glider or something, right? That might make things a little wonky. But yeah, I think if you're matching gear for your level, and you're taking it slow and not just getting out there in the craziest conditions possible, I think why are you, is that where you're at? Like you've been flying a pod though.
That's yeah. Well, I was the guy that broke all the rules, and I was flying an open harness for like the first maybe 50 flights, and then I was like, I don't want to be in an open harness. Everyone else is flying pod harness, and I want to learn how to do that now. And I broke. Obviously should not have done that for multiple reasons. I was too early, and I found out the hard way. And I did have a cascade event over Palomar, and I think it could have been less aggressive had I just been in a lesser aggressive wing and a lesser aggressive harness. I think the reward for flying in a pod harness is very negligible compared to what I was trying to do. And in my mind, I was like, no, I want to learn how to be good at this now and be, it's like why jump onto that expert motorcycle when you can't even, touch your knee on the ground on a turn? But you're not, it's hard to break through my thick head.
You wanted
But
to
now-
be on the R1, even though you had just picked up riding.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, everybody has their own pace. I was on the fast track for destruction. There were certain people that kind of pushed me back into my lane and made me realize, I was making mistakes, but really it was the Cascade over Palomar that made me wake up, and that birthed this show. So something good did come out of it. And, once when I started waking up in the morning and my YouTube channel said, you gained 100 subscribers tonight. I was like, what the heck? One day, 100? And then it was like, you gained 1,000 subscribers today. I was like, whoa, what the heck's going on around here? And I figured I better share my experience.
All you had to do was almost kill yourself.
Yeah, you just have to die almost. Great story, but did you die? So last question. We got just a couple minutes left, literally. What advice do you have for the new guys that are wanting to fly XC?
Oh, well, we used to have a little clinic for that when I was working Saboba. And I think, if you're flying at a local site, you're familiar with the terrain and how that works. Depending on where you are and what options you have, obviously. But like at Saboba and at our site, what we would do is we would go up to the launch and we would pick a decent flying day. And then we would, this is like day one of like, okay, I want to try this, right? We would pick a spot that we thought that we could get to just on glide, right? And then we would get into the air, and then over radio, we would call out, where we thought that might have moved to. Do you think you can get further, or do you think it's closer? And then we would set out for it. We would, obviously have safe landing options if we came up short. And almost every single time that we did that, the students, and I would go with them, right? But we would land short. We would always land short. So that was a really good exercise. It's like when you're in lift and you're up against the ridge, or you're in the thermic, or you have the terrain under you to produce the lift, you feel like you can go on forever. And when you leave that area, and then you quickly realize, oh, like I gotta deal with this situation, right? So it really forces you not just to have a suitable landing zone in sight, but also to think about like the worst case scenario, which is like you just get slammed with sink and headwind as soon as you move out. And so, because sometimes people are thinking like what their options are when they're in the good zone, right? And not really considering what happens if they're not. So I think that's a really good exercise. At our site, you can kind of go down the range and see how far. And what's really great these days that we didn't have when I started was we have Uber now. So if you don't make it, you could just call an Uber and get back to your pad for like $20-$30. Yeah. So I think it's now much easier to start off with a little bit of XC than it's ever been before. But and just like with anything, go and don't go for the extreme conditions. Don't try to bust records on your first attempt, and expect to fail over and over again, and just leave yourself room for when things don't go right.
Yep. That's great advice. Thank you so much again for coming on the show. I want to mention Resurgence PPG. If you want to support our men and women of uniform, you can make a tax-deductible donation to Resurgence PPG. It's a great organization, trusted, tried, and tested. Todd Scandrett is the guy who started that organization. It is a 501c3, so it is tax-deductible, but go to their website, resurgenceppg.com. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for contributing to the show. Those who've given and super chats, and those who are supporting the show on Patreon or PayPal. Thank you guys. You guys are awesome. If you do want to support the show on Patreon, there's a link in the description. Please go there. Do what you can. For the price of a cup of coffee, you can learn something that might save your life or save somebody else's life. And let's continue the sport in good fashion. We're going to go to the after show. We'll put a link in the description if you want to come and hang out. And also want to just say thank you to all the moderators, all the guys with the tool next to their name. And thank you all for being a part of the show. Great episode. Thank you again, Jordan. If you want to find Jordan, flywithjordan.info. Flywithjordan.info. Sign up some classes. Come to San Diego. Come to Southern California. Come check out Jordan's teaching, and you will not be disappointed. There's some incredible places to fly here. Incredible instruction coming out of Jordan's school. So, anyways, thank you guys so much. We're going to go to the after show. If I don't see you on the air, I'll see you in the air. Have a great night.